Okay, Papaji, I think I want to summarize where we are. We've seen a number of differences between the Torah and the Quran when it comes to the stories of the old prophets. And I kind of want to run through what it means to confirm previous scriptures and just show a couple of examples just to highlight my position and where my position sort of stands overall. So let me take my position as a Christian at the moment, just to sort of paint a picture. So if I start with the Torah, which is part of my scriptures, the earliest revelation from Allah, okay? So we have the Torah, and this is around the 13th century, okay? Then the Tanakh comes along, which strictly speaking is also the Torah. It contains the Torah, but the Tanakh comes along, um, and and it's in line with the Torah, and it doesn't contradict the Torah, and it expands upon the Torah. Okay, so I'm happy with this script, with this later scripture confirming the earlier scripture. Okay. Then around the first century, we have the Greek New Testament, which includes the Gospels of Jesus Christ, as well as the epistles or the letters written by his disciples, eyewitnesses, and historians. And again, when I read all of these, they confirm the previous scriptures and it expands upon the previous scriptures and it does not contradict the previous scriptures. So again, I accept this as part of my scriptural canon. Then about 1800 years later, in the 19th century, we get the Book of Mormon. Now, the Book of Mormon is by Joseph Smith, who claims to be a prophet, and he claims to have another revelation. As you can see, the title of this book is called Another Testament of Jesus Christ. So he claims to have a revelation from God, from Allah, and he says that this comes confirming the previous scriptures and in line with the previous scriptures. So as a Christian, when I read the Book of Mormon, I start to see a number of significant contradictions, which means this cannot be a revelation from God, because obviously God's revelation should not and cannot contradict. For example, in the Book of Mormon, it teaches that every person has the potentiality to become God and own their own planets. And obviously, this goes against a clear teaching from the previous scriptures that God is one. Okay. So, as a Christian, I look at the Book of Mormon and I reject this as it does not come in line with the previous scriptures. It does not confirm the previous scriptures. So another example, which is probably closer to home that you can relate to, is we have the Holy Quran in the 7th century. Okay. Then about 1100 years later, in the 19th century, you have the Ahmadiyya Muslims. And the Ahmadiyyas claim to have the true doctrines of Islam. Okay. So when you put the Ahmadiyya doctrines or teachings or what they call scripture, if they call it scripture, when you put that and stack that to the Holy Quran, it doesn't confirm the Holy Quran, nor is it in line with the Holy Quran. And there are many contradictions. For example, the Ahmadiyyas teach that Prophet Muhammad is not the last prophet of Allah, whereas the Quran clearly teaches that Prophet Muhammad is the last prophet of Allah. Or another example is that the Ahmadiyya Muslims teaches that Jesus lived and died in sort of moved to India after Israel and lived and then died in India, whereas the Quran teaches that Jesus was raised up to Allah in heaven in Israel around the time of the crucifixion, and it was made to appear so. So again, another contradiction. So as a Sunni or Shia Muslim, looking at this teachings from Ahmadiyya, you have to reject this as it does not confirm the previous scripture, i.e., the Quran, nor does it come in alignment of the Quran. In fact, it contradicts. So then it brings us to my position when I start off with the Torah and then I assess the claims of the Quran. So 1800 years later, in the 7th century, we have the Holy Quran, and we've seen not only the differences, but we've seen where there are significant contradictions. We've seen that across the story of Joseph and Jacob, where many contradictions exist in terms of what Jacob believed, how old Joseph was, whether Potiphar believed that Joseph was guilty of trying to seduce his wife, or whether the wife was guilty. And then these are just some of the examples. But when I when I compare it to the Torah and see that it doesn't come in line with the Torah, it doesn't confirm the Torah, then as a Christian, I'm left with very little choice other than to reject the Quran. In the same way you would reject the teachings of Ahmadiyya not being the word of Allah, or the same way we would reject the teachings of Joseph Smith, the Book of Mormon, of not being the word of Allah. Um, and so that is kind of my position in a nutshell. And obviously, we've combed through all of the significant areas where there is not alignment. And but as I've always stated, I'm always open-minded. I want to follow the evidence where it leads me, and I'm happy to continue to engage um, on this topic. Okay, thank you.